Welcome in and welcome back to For FF's Sake. This is Ian, and I have Nathan here at Nate Cheat, founder of the IDPguys.org. And we're going to talk a little bit of the Lions football in the lead up to this season.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for having me on your show. A little bit about me is I founder, owner, co-owner now of IDPguys.org. We are a fantasy football website that deals generally in IDP, but we cover just about anything dynasty at this point. Definitely go and check that out. But one of the new side projects I'm kind of working on and pushing right now is I'll be launching a website in a couple of weeks here on helping content creators like achieve their goals. So kind of a coaching for content creators, guys like you, Ian, all the way up to, anyone even kind of more established that just needs a little help figuring out like either a new skill or if you're doing creating a website for yourself, something like that. I'll have resources available on my website. It's contentdesigncoach.com. Currently not yet launched, but you can go there, put your email in, and you'll get an email when it does launch. With that will be a new podcast series that I'm putting together. I put a teaser on my Twitter account where I spoke with Calvin and Javi from DLF, and we talked about how to be a good podcast YouTube host.
Oh, man, I should probably check that out then.
Yeah, so the full episode will air close to when the site launches, but I put a little teaser there where it was just how to prepare for a guest. It was a little like 1 minute clip where he goes through and talks about just some key things that he does to make sure that he's prepared for a guest. And so this podcast series is going to be a lot of that. It's going to be me reaching out through my network to people that are experts in something that content creators need to learn about, being a podcast host. I'll have one on growing a Twitter following and, being a content or a article creator, a writer for a website that's coming. Just trying to look for anything that can be helpful for, guys figuring it out, on their own for the most part.
Yeah.
Because I've been in this field in the fantasy football industry for 6 years now, I believe. And overall, like in journalism and different things for 10 to 15 years. But a lot of it was me figuring it out, me learning what was the best equipment for podcasting, me learning how to get a show up on YouTube properly and do all those kind of things. So just trying to take that information, package it really nicely, and have it available for people to go in and take what they need.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's definitely something that I think, Evan and I would have liked a little in the early days, because we've kind of done the same thing that you did, sort of fly by the seat of our pants and figure it out. Evan has a good friend who owns a radio station up in Tennessee. And when I was on the road with my family, we sort of grabbed lunch, and we play in a fantasy league together. And he was like, you two idiots should, you argue all the time. You should get a show together or start a podcast or something. So we sort of toyed with the idea, and then we started to jump in last season. And I think ultimately it's been pretty good, and we still have a lot to learn. But yeah, we've definitely, if those resources had been available at the time, it would have been maybe more streamlined. But we are here now, and we have a lot to learn still. So it's good to have you on, and maybe you'll be able to give us some advice going down the line for sure.
Absolutely. But about me also, I'm a Lions fan.
Sorry about that.
Born and raised in Detroit, and then moved out east, outside of Bristol, Connecticut. And
see, you're in good football country now. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. There's a lot of Pats fans out here, and
It's great.
they're all like young, so they've never like felt the devastation of being a fan of a team that just really sucks. Because none of them are old enough to remember what it was like before Tom Brady.
Right, right. I'm kind of in that in that camp a little bit, but I did start watching slash playing as the Patriots on Madden as a 10-year-old pre-Brady. So
Oh
with
wow.
Drew Bledsoe and Damian Woody. Yeah, I'm older than I look. That's why I wear a hat because I'm very gray and it hides the pepper that or sorry, the salt. Gives the allure of pepper, but there's a lot of salt under there. But yeah, I got lucky. I picked them because they were called England, and as a 10-year-old, I didn't understand the irony. So I would say I don't remember the bad years either, because even with Bledsoe, they were a decent team. Um, they were probably kind of where they are now. You know, like a sort of a playoff contender. Not really worried about them deep into the postseason, but they're going to put up some good games and have some fantasy relevant pieces. But yeah, the 20 years with Brady was definitely a nice
It
nice
was the
ride.
next, it was like a step above. It was just at a point of unfair. I mean, looking back now, I definitely have a lot of respect for Brady. Seeing what he did in Tampa, and I mean, it continues to do,
Yeah,
that you've got to still be kind of a fan, even if you've been a hater in the past.
yeah.
But being in the thick of Patriots country when Tom Brady was here, going to the bar and just I don't know, they call like Dallas fans obnoxious and in Texas, and Patriots fans in New England just beyond
Yeah, but at
that.
least the Patriots fans are backing it up with results. Dallas haven't been good since the '90s, so they're
True.
like the Miami Hurricanes of the NFL.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, the biggest problem with Patriots fans is generally that they don't care about the game. They just show up for the Super Bowl. Is Tom Brady in the Super Bowl? Okay, I'm watching football this year. So that's the biggest gripe with them. But no, I mean, guys that have been fans of the teams before Tom Brady generally have more of an appreciation, and
Oh,
so there are people that I can get
yeah.
along with and talk to.
Well, the Patriots were horrible for so long. They were probably worse than the Lions for the longest time. They really didn't have anybody of note to talk about. At least the Lions had Barry Sanders, they had Calvin Johnson, they had Matthew Stafford, they had some nice years there, even without the postseason success. But the Patriots for the longest time were just it was a barren wasteland of just hot garbage for decades. So I think they did earn it overall. But yeah, they may have relished in it a little bit. But that's enough about my Patriots. Let's talk about your Lions. As we sort of talked about pre-show, not the most NFL relevant team, although some promising moves, I would say this offseason, but
Yeah.
they are a fantasy enigma, so to speak. A lot of pieces that have a lot of interest, but I would say every single one is like you take them with like bated breath. You
Yeah.
draft them like like is this going to be a fun ride? Probably not, but it's a step up from the Jaguars, but like it's still like oh no, this could be. They were better last year than I ever expected them to be as far as on offensively. They got to the end zone a lot more often than I think most people realized. There was a lot of games there that this year I could see them sneaking more W's, maybe 50% more wins. So
That's kind of the hope, and looking at last year. So truth be told, went into last year as a complete wash, was really not paying that much attention to the team because after Patricia and Quinn left, they completely just devastated that team. I mean, talk about like taking over an orphan where the manager before you just did not give a crap and just traded everything for peanuts, like
right.
just let the team go to crap. And then, Dan Campbell came in. I think he had to kind of come in guns blazing, and that's where you got the whole bite kneecaps and all that kind of stuff. It was just he needed to make a mark, he needed to make some headlines so that he could attract some talent or just get people pumped, and he's really good at that for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
But going into last year, I was like, there's no one on this team. there's no one there. Stafford was traded. You know, you've got Swift, you've got Hawkinson. It just there what and I'm not a Jared Goff fan. I'll watch him, but I'm looking forward to the next guy. I
Yeah.
don't want him to, stick around at all. If I
He's
have
like
my
a
way.
higher expectation Jimmy Garoppolo for me. Like he's a
Mhm.
very similar player, but he had early success. And so there's like a glare of like, is he good? But not really. Whereas Jimmy Garoppolo, he's just okay. He's
Right.
a placeholder. He's a less obnoxious Baker Mayfield. He can move the ball. But Jared Goff had a great year one, decent year two, and then you're like, oh, he might be a player. No, he's not that great.
Now, what I was really hoping for was them to do some weird, almost power move where they then shipped Goff off for another couple first round picks or something. And I would have been fine with them even eating the salary and then bringing someone in like Fitzpatrick,
Yeah,
just to have fun with it. Like
yeah,
just YOLO the season and have someone to kind of. I feel like Dan Campbell and Fitzpatrick would have gotten along great. It would have been very entertaining, and it would have been a reason to watch.
right.
Whereas I don't know. I wasn't like really into it. So I really kind of uh took to the Rams with Stafford going there.
Yeah,
I said, I'm gonna just live vicariously through him,
yeah,
through Rams fans. And I mean, I was so confident that he was gonna do what he did and get to the Super Bowl and win it, that it was early November. We had just gotten what was it? Sports betting here in Connecticut.
okay,
So I put $50 down on the Rams to win the Super Bowl, and it came back, plus 350
nice.
or $350 on that bet. So it was a cash out at 400 after he won. But I was so confident. I was like,
Yeah,
I think it's all there. I think he can do it. And the price was amazing for FanDuel. And so I laid it right out right then. I was watching every game anyways. And when they hit, I mean, I knew they were going to hit the playoffs because like that talent of a team, they're
yeah,
especially with Stafford, it's like they went to the playoffs last year and went kind of deep with Jared Goff.
right.
And Goff is, no Matthew Stafford. So I was like, they've got to have a run here. And the chips fell just about perfect for them. And they made it. And that was like an emotional Super Bowl for me just because of, Stafford playing and just like how he played in Detroit. It all came down to that last minute, that last drive for him to go forward and win the game.
Yeah, and especially the one against Tampa too. I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
That was Brady-esque against Brady in
Yeah.
Tampa, which is beyond impressive. So, a lot of people make fun of the Lions fans and the times they've been through, but I will say one thing: they seem to be a real loyal bunch. They like their guys. I didn't hear a single negative thing about when Stafford was moved about him. Like you get a lot of bitter fans a lot of times when people move, especially in division,
Mhm.
or sorry, conference. Sorry, but what?
Yeah.
Um, but nothing. Like yourself, everybody was just happy for him to kind of get a situation to really um promote his ability so that it wasn't a question mark anymore. Like, because it was always that like question mark. Is he really good? Or like, is it
Right.
just flashing? Like, could it really other lines that bad that they could be hold him, have held him back so much when other quarterbacks have had similar situations and had success. But yeah, it was good to see and honestly, it was vindication for McVay as well. I think that was. I honestly
Yeah.
think if it had been another couple years before he won one, it could have been a what if situation. Like he may never have won one. because he kept burning picks, burning picks to
Yep.
get that team, and it just never quite happened. They would always lose. Like in the divisional round, they obviously got to the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and as good as they were that year, the defense, they scored 3 points. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe it could be a defining moment for McVay, and it was a great Super Bowl. It was a right Super Bowl. So
Yeah, it was good. And it was one of those Super Bowls where, I mean, yeah, I was rooting for Stafford and everything, but had the Bengals won, that still would have been great.
Yeah, nobody would have hated Joe Shiesty.
Yeah, like it, and this goes back to it wasn't a Patriots Super Bowl. I didn't have to worry about, the Patriots, losing or winning or anything. Like that goes back to my friend. It's like every year that the Patriots were in, it was just like we were just a fan of the other team.
Yeah, no, I got a lot of that, but I relished in it. I'm in enemy territory, so I love being in South Florida during the season. Usually, last year was pretty tough. They beat us twice, but as much hate have you given Jared Goff? Is he a relevant piece this year? With the additions you guys have made?
So Jared Goff is a fantasy wise, he's a QB3 with upside. So if you're in a super flex league, you need a backup, someone that can come in. Jared Goff's price is cheap. He's going, way into the depth of quarterbacks. He might even go undrafted, and depending on the size of your league. So picking him up is like a late pick in a startup or off the waiver wire going into the season. He can't hurt because if he gets the right game, he can put up numbers. Like I just have a problem with his decision making. There were so many times that I would be watching the game and I'd see him throw into double coverage into Lions fans used to coin a Stafford window, which was generally about the size of the receiver's hands in between two defenders. So like just a bullet shot right through that, the receiver would catch. Well, Goff would throw into these double coverages and generally get a pick, or it would just, fall flat on the ground. Like it was just not good decision making because there would be someone else that was wide open. And it was just constantly like, oh man, like that was a touchdown had he thrown it to the right team, team.
Right. So here's a question because they're both going to be going pretty late. Matt Ryan or Jared, excuse me, or Jared Goff. Given the weapons that he has, with Chark and Williams when he comes back, assuming he's healthy to start the year, that would be great. But with Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, TJ Hawkinson, and Jameson Williams, who would you target out of the two between Goff and Matt Ryan? Obviously, Matt Ryan just got a huge upgrade for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would probably I like Matt Ryan more than Goff, even though Matt Ryan you get two quarterbacks that are at different points in their career and at different levels. So Matt Ryan, I'd say, is a good quarterback that is aging out of the league, essentially. You saw what he did last year. He was kind of sluggish. He wasn't really making the throws he needed to make, and which essentially caused him to kind of to not be kept by the Falcons, and he went left the team there, and he's getting another shot. So I'm not. He's another one of those quarterback 2, quarterback 3 players, but I like his upside more than Goff, just because Goff is not an aging quarterback necessarily. He's just not that good, in my opinion.
Right.
And so if I was I needed a quarterback like at that spot, I would probably take Matt Ryan. And I but I think Matt Ryan's is probably going to go ahead of Goff anyways. So
True, true. I just wonder because, yes, they obviously drafted who did they drafted Alec Pierce, the Colts did. I don't know how much I rate him. But he will be a nice piece to draw some attention away from Pittman. But I just look at the weapons that the Lions have on the outside. I mean, I think Chark's kind of slept on. He's only 25 years old. He's proven that he can have like legitimate like wide receiver 1 weeks. He can really stretch a field, and then you add in Jameson Williams, who outside of the injury, I think probably could have been going as one of the top wide receivers in this draft had he not had the injury in his final season.
Yep.
That's just, and with as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown played the end of last year, and obviously Hawkinson, we know how he can play. It's just like a lot of great pieces. I mean, honestly,
yeah,
put it up there with Miami or Kansas City or even Los Angeles with their receiver group. It's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree with you there. The difference is, if you look at Miami, you got Tua, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, and the Raiders they still have Derek Carr.
Yes.
All three of those are so much better than Jared Goff, so it's not I don't think it's the talent of the receivers that's going to hold the Lions back this year. I really kind of place it on the QB, and essentially, does he take that step forward? Or I guess not. I mean, he's not necessarily developing, but like kind of getting some of that spark back from, his rookie year, his early years with the Rams. Because I mean, if you go back to, what was it, the Rams Kansas City game, Mahomes sophomore year,
they won, didn't they? The Rams won, wasn't it? Like
50? The Rams won. It was 50-something to 50-something.
Yeah.
And there was that was one of my favorite games from a defensive standpoint and an offensive standpoint, because it wasn't necessarily like just a defensive struggle, but the defense was showing up. They were putting up points, and it was quick points. So it was, a fumble recovered for a touchdown, an interception, pick six, all of these like big splash plays. And then on the flip side, it was happening on both sides. It wasn't like one quarterback was sucking that bad. They were both just met with such force on the opposing defense that they were, making mistakes. But then they'd come back and throw, Mahomes for, a 45-yard bomb for a touchdown from Tyreek Hill, or Jared Goff throwing. I don't remember the receivers back then.
Woods or Cup, most likely.
Yeah, and it was just an amazing game. And if he could pull from that and be any semblance of that, then I think that, the Lions could be a dark horse into the playoffs, and he could be, this is where the upside comes in of that talent around him is there. And if he can tap into it correctly, he could be a great, great piece. I just don't see it because I watched him last year.
Right.
And, he's got to make improvements on decision-making. And I don't know if that means like he needs to step it back and not like either he's being told, send it to this receiver, and he's just getting it there no matter what, or he's checking down to the wrong people, right. So he's got to figure that out. And I don't know. So that's kind of, where I'm at with that team is take Goff out of there and put any of the quarterbacks we talked about, and you've got I don't know if I'd say Super Bowl contender, but that offense would stack up against, plenty of other ones.
Sure. Yeah. And obviously the offense is a pretty I would say big question mark coming into this year in a good way, because is who is going to benefit the most, I think, from all the pieces that are there now. Obviously, like I said, we touched on Jameson Williams, real talent coming out, like great talent. DJ Chark as another outside guy that can really stretch the field and can cause problems, assuming he can stay healthy, because that's been a problem.
Yeah.
Um, the biggest question mark, I think, a lot of people coming into this year is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Great end to his rookie year. A lot of people put that down to the time missed by Swift and Hawkinson,
Yep.
and no other options, so to speak. I mean, there was other pieces there, but nothing of note. You're talking about Quintus Cephas and some of the other guys on the depth chart. So for you as a fan, how do you think that the additions, how do you think that they, and obviously the Swift coming back fully healthy and Hawkinson fully healthy, how does that impact Amon-Ra's production? And where are you looking at if you were going to target him? Where do you think is it a fair place to be drafting a guy like him?
Yeah. So I like Ra. I want to temper expectations because I don't think he's going to be the Ra from the end of last season. Obviously he's going to have a lot more competition for snaps. I think Chark is a really good option as their wide receiver one. I don't know if I would call him a fantasy wide receiver one, but for Ra, I really like him. So if you've already drafted him in a rookie draft, like he's definitely not a sell. Mm-hmm. You're holding on to him and you're waiting to see what's going on. But if you're in a startup or in redraft, a flex play, a wide receiver 3, I think he's got great upside and his price is dropping so that you can get him, pretty late in your drafts as a kind of add-on piece. I think that, and I've gone back and forth. I did a Lions pod with a buddy of mine a couple days ago, and there was another guy, and we were kind of like, we had the same view of Ra's spot, the flex play wide receiver 3, but he was more along the lines of, he's just not going to see the targets and everything. But I think that he developed something with Goff last season, and I can't see why they wouldn't keep that going through the training camp and the off season, all that stuff. Like,
right,
why wouldn't Goff toss a couple to his buddy Ra, know? And then they get into a game situation where Jared Goff's probably making bad decisions, and then, hey, look, Amon-Ra's right there, or Dan Campbell, puts them into a really good spot for Goff to, check it down to him. And Ra was putting up numbers from behind the line of scrimmage, catching balls within the 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and going and running them up. I think that's kind of his spot right now. If he can develop more and take a bigger target share, he's definitely got the upside. I think Jameson Williams, while I'm drafting him, could be a little more of a wait, and he's going to develop, especially with a different quarterback. So he's kind of like a longer view. But if you're looking for the piece to get, it's really Hawkinson, Swift, and then Chark, as that third player of relevance on that.
Right. Team. Yeah, I think mirror a lot of what you just said. I mean, I've drafted Williams in a league where I'm really not needy. I haven't even pulled him off my taxi because I have pieces where I don't have to play him. And I think, like you said, there's could be a move for a quarterback in free agency or a draft of a quarterback next year for the long term. And Jameson Williams could be a real problem going forwards. But I do think that these additions, I personally think it helps Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit. Like, he seems to me very similar in archetype to how Robert Woods was used in LA when Goff was the quarterback there. Like you say, a lot of targets close to the line of scrimmage, not a high ADOT, but pretty shifty. can make people miss and good hands.
Mhm.
And a guy like Goff, um, while he's certainly not a terrible quarterback, he definitely needs a blanket. And I think he found that with him late in the season last year, and um, which he didn't have earlier in the season when you guys were sort of losing games, real close games, and then you start to
Yep.
kind of find a rhythm towards the end of the year. And Amon-Ra and Goff's relationship was a big part of that. So I personally am fading Hawkinson everywhere I can see him because for me, his opportunity cost way too high. A lot of
Yep.
people are hype on him because he was the tight end one after, was it like 5 weeks last year?
Mhm.
Um, but I just don't see Goff didn't use a tight end a whole lot his whole career. There's
Yep.
stretches where he would target the guy, but for the most part, he's a receiver kind of guy, likes to slot, and then he'll take shots down the field. So for me, Hawkinson's going to be probably maybe the sixth or seventh tight end off the board, and I'd rather wait for Cole Kmet or even Robert Tonyan if he makes it through OTAs healthy and just for the opportunity cost. So I mean, if I'm going to pay up for a tight end at that sort of spot, then I want a cheap Darren Waller or a Dalton Schultz or somebody like that I know is going to get those high value targets in situations where there's been no additions in Dallas, no additions in Chicago, and they're going to have to sling it. So Hawkinson for me is the biggest fade on the offense. I'm very excited to see what Swift can do. I do. He to me is like a new Dalvin Cook or a newer Dalvin Cook because very similar skill
Okay.
set. And there's that pretty much you could lock him down for 2 or 3 games a season. He's going to miss for one reason or another, but he's going to play most of the year. And when he plays, he's going to be elite.
Yep.
I have seen the reports as they always come out every preseason. All these guys are putting on bulk or they're slimming down or whatever they need to say to sell jerseys or whatever. But he looks good. He was great last year.
Mhm.
The biggest question mark is Jamal Williams was retained, right? He's still there,
Yep.
I think. So
Yeah.
do you think he's still a stash? Because there were games where it was like Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, sort of
Uh-huh.
2.0.
I think so. I think that he is a good if you have the ability to bench, keep him on your bench and see how things go this season, what they come out with, because last year they fired Anthony Lynn, the OC. I want to say halfway through the season or some point. So at that point, you're kind of audibling for the rest
Right.
of the year. Like you went in with a plan with that OC, and then now it's like, okay, this isn't working. So, they had to kind of piece it together. So now they've got the off season to kind of figure it out. So do they do the Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt situation, or do they, just kind of hold Jamal back to
Like
just kind of
Madison.
um, spell Swift? But so I like it. I'm there for it, and he's definitely a character, that is for sure. So a good guy to root for, if he's on
Yeah.
your team.
Yeah, I like him as a player. He's kind of one of those guys, like you say, that's good in the locker room. I think he was great in Green Bay in the role. He seems to be pretty secure in what he does in the NFL. Like he knows he's a pretty damn good backup, and
Yep.
when he needs to be called upon, he can move the ball as good as anybody. Like as I see him as more of a this season. I'm kind of on your side. I see him as more of a Madison kind of
Mm.
coming in give Swift a break here and there, and then if Swift goes down / when Swift goes down for a couple games, he's going to be an automatic spot start, probably high end RB2, low end RB1, depending on the matchup. Obviously,
Yeah.
I think Madison is a better version, but I think I would put Jamal Williams in there with Pollard and Madison and AJ Dillon as like the elite level handcuffs, and
Mm.
guys I target when I don't have the number one. I want the handcuff because I want that RB1 for those 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or I want to stiff the owner of Zeke or Aaron Jones when they go down for a week and a half or 2 weeks. I want to go, yeah, okay, that's fine. Let me get this guy. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, so Swift is one guy that his price is a little bit too high for me.
yeah,
Usually when he around the point that he's going, um, I'm just going with someone else, like just my whatever my strategy is. So I don't have a lot of shares of him, but he's an electric player, and I love that he's on the team.
yeah.
And if you've got him, especially on a rookie draft, oh man, like great. He's a great player.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we talked about it before the show, and I did draft him as a rookie, but I had to move him because I got shafted by Aaron Rodgers and his offseason last year. So I had to make a move for a more solid quarterback piece, and he was the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. And I've regretted it ever since. But so as a Florida fan, I didn't feel too bad about shipping off a Georgia boy to somebody else.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's I don't have those I guess problems or whatnot. I don't watch a lot of college football, so I don't have like my teams where it's like
Oh yeah, yeah. I live and die by Florida a little bit. Drafted Kadarius Toney. Really, really wanted Damian Pierce this year.
mm,
I think I might end up with him in a couple of redraft leagues just because his opportunity is palpable in Houston. I mean, shoot, even David Johnson was actually somewhat serviceable as a fantasy asset 2 seasons ago in a terrible Houston team. So I think they're better this year. I think he's one of the better running backs coming out of this class, actually, sneakily. Obviously,
yeah.
your main guys, Kenneth Walker, Brees Hall, they're going to be pretty early picks, even in redraft. But Damian Pierce, you could probably get in like the 10th, 11th round. And a lot of people won't even know who he is because he's an older college back. And we
Mhm.
use so many backs in Florida that they don't get enough hype to be drafted pretty high. So,
Mhm.
but he's a real workhorse back. So if he only has to beat out Rex Burkhead, I'm pretty confident he's gonna and the ghost of Marlon Mack.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's gonna get the most snaps. Maybe not initially, but he'll establish himself after a few weeks.
Yeah, who's even on that team that's
Nobody.
yeah, I don't
Brandon
know
Cooks.
like so who would you take it as straight up Houston or Detroit? I guess like that could be an easy win. Are
Oh
they
yeah.
playing this year?
Detroit should wipe the floor with Houston. Houston are
They have nobody.
they might even be worse than Jacksonville, possibly.
Yeah.
Jacksonville at least added some pieces. I'm really upset with how well the Jets did this offseason. Just it makes me sick to my stomach because they're the Jets. But they have a very good history of messing it up. So we're
Yeah.
still I'm not that worried about them, but they could be a problem in 2 or 3 years. They could be the next Bengals.
Yeah, could be,
They're
could be.
super young. They have no investment anywhere. Still have a ton of cap space.
Yeah.
So yeah, they could be a problem. But yeah, the Houston Texans are just garbage. So
Yeah, it's funny. So a little bit of backstory of like my football fandom is I actually didn't start watching football until like 2009 ish. My buddy who I do a podcast with, he's the one that originally introduced me to football, like in an I don't want to say an adult way, but like going to buddies, drinking beer, talking about fantasy football, all that kind of stuff. Because when I was growing up in Detroit, like Detroit sucked so bad that I did not want to watch football.
right, that was
Like,
back in the brown paper bag days, right?
oh, absolutely. Like I still remember the year that the Lions went 0-16. A older like family friend was like, "Oh, I gotta watch this game," and I was like, "What's the point? Like, why are you doing this to yourself?" Like, not understanding anything about it. And then I turned 21 and connected with my buddy, and we started going to football parties on every Sunday to watch the games and all that kind of stuff. And it was all decked out, so it was like there were 3 TVs, so like the main TV with Red Zone and then the 2 local channels. So we were watching. There was just so much going on. And originally, because the Lions were so bad, I didn't want to pick them as my team. I went with the Jets because the owner of the where I worked was a Patriots fan, and he was just obnoxious. Like, so I I would come in with like Jets gear on, and this was back when Rex Ryan was coaching the team, and he have these press conferences where he just like bring up something ridiculous or like have these ridiculous statements or like guarantee a win or all of this stuff. And it was him and Belichick going back and forth all the time and this drama. And it was just so much fun to then play that out at work.
Sure.
Um,
I'd have fired you personally.
I'm surprised I wasn't. But and that lasted about a season because then I was like, you know what? I'm from Detroit, like, and they started putting it together, and I was like, I'm I'm just gonna do it, like, be a home, go to my home team, and over a couple of years, like, it's not like an overnight thing. I just really got invested into Detroit to the point that just a super fan now,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's not many of those. Well, no, the Detroit's that's a good fan base. I'll give them that. That's a good fan base. They've been through the ringer. So
Very loyal. Yeah.
as the founder of IDP, guys, it's not something we discuss much on the show because Evan and I are beyond newbies in that field. But I figured we let you take the mantle a little bit and sort of, for any listeners out there that are IDP players and interested in any sort of tips and tidbits and any guys that you're really targeting this season, even in Detroit. I know you guys drafted a couple good pieces on defense last season and this season. So if there's any that you're maybe targeting in your redraft leagues that are IDP and outside of Detroit, any that you would say are real, you have to draft them. You can't miss on these guys. They're going to be huge.
Yeah. So essentially, for those people that play IDP, but if you don't, like, it can be daunting to get into it. And first off, just to peddle a little bit of what we do at the site. We just launched the IDP draft kit, and this is essentially like the fantasy footballers do the UDK, the Ultimate Draft Kit. This is the IDP version, and it's everything you need for redraft, especially if you're just starting. There's great resources that are part of it that are videos, articles, walking you through just how to get going. And even to the point, I put this thing together, which, tiered draft sheets that are printable.
Oh, nice.
That we update, throughout the summer and everything. So if you're thinking about getting into IDP, definitely check that out at idpguys.org. But I mean, the reason I play it is, excuse me, I was essentially born into it. When my first fantasy league was IDP. So I didn't know that you just played offense. And at the point that like I learned that, I was like, wow, that's like half the team is gone. Like, how easy is that? So like, and I've gone so far beyond like the standard is like having about like 6 IDP players or starters for your team. I generally play in leagues where it's like 11. Sometimes I've set up leagues that are just IDP, so no offense, which those are fun. And I've done incredibly deep. So like on Yahoo, they allow you to have essentially 30 starters. So I did a league where it was 30 IDP. You had to start 30 every week. So, you've got like linebacker 6, 7, and 8 that you have to pull out because there's also 12 other people, 11 other people. And so that's, 120 linebackers that are starting. You got one bench spot. So I go crazy with this stuff because I love it, but it's really, you're watching the game, and if you're only really watching offense, you're watching only half the game. Like, there's a whole reason that um there's content out there of like the wide receiver cornerback matchup. When you're thinking about who to start at wide receiver, like, you'll see an article. It's like, okay, what's the cornerback they're going against? And like, that's like the littlest bit of information offensive people will consider sometimes with defense. But then once you really get into it and you realize like guys like Darius Leonard, Roquan Smith, Devin White, these big names that everyone knows anyways. But then, you go farther deeper, Jordan Brooks, like edge would be like Nick Bosa. I mean, Aaron Donald just got his extension.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Today. He is the number one defensive tackle. And what was interesting was when he was talking about retiring, his dynasty value was slipping. So he went from a clear-cut defensive tackle. If you play in a league that has a defensive tackle, he was your clear-cut number one. It would be like starting a quarterback at tight end. Just the amount of points and what he puts up.
Oh, wow, okay.
There, it was just ridiculous. So he started this contract dispute, and you just watch his ADP drop, and it was just like, oh man, that's amazing, because I had a suspicion he was just kind of, not that he was bluffing, but it was like a game of chicken, and he was ready to just smash into their car. Like, and the Rams had to pay him. Like, if they're going to do another, make another run for the Super Bowl, like, how are you going to let him retire?
Yeah, for sure.
So, that it's like opening up a whole other world of fantasy football and doubling the size of like what you have, the interesting stuff that's going on in the season. So, I mean, I don't know how better to sell IDP other than, everyone's just like, oh man, it's so many more players, or they've tried IDP and they've only had a single starter. Like, having a single IDP starter is like having a single offensive starter. Like, what are you going to do in that situation? You're going to start a quarterback,
right,
every time, and there's going to be 32 quarterbacks, so you're just going to like not pay attention to it because you'll get one of the top 12, and there's not much difference.
Right.
Yeah. Between, your number one and your number 12 for quarterbacks. So it's the same thing. So there's no challenge to it. People just like, oh, well, I don't want to care about it, or I don't want to think about it because it's not relevant enough. But then when you throw in, you got to start 3 or 4 linebackers, 2 defensive linemen, or even defensive end and defensive tackle, your defensive backs or safeties, cornerbacks, like, that's where it becomes like, and with the right scoring, you can win your league off a good defense and a piece together offense.
Mm-hmm.
It just opens up the paths to the championship. Instead of it just being like, okay, well, we know that the guy with the first round pick, he's not an idiot. He's going to pick the best stuff, or, the best at that position. He's most likely going to win the league just because of that. And, he's going to work the waiver wire. Like, that if you miss out on certain players, you're screwed.
Right.
Whereas when you add in that extra complication to your league, it levels the playing field out, because you missed out on getting a Josh Allen quarterback, but you picked up a Roquan Smith or the Aaron Donald, and now you have a week where Aaron Donald throws down 6 sacks on Trevor Lawrence, and he puts up the same numbers as Josh Allen. Situation like that, it levels things out. It makes things interesting. Watching a game, you're happy when your team is on offense and defense. So like when Roquan Smith makes a huge stop of the running back, and you're just like, yeah, but everyone else is looking at you going, the running back ran like a half a yard. Like, why are you cheering? It's like, no, he got a tackle, or it was behind the line of scrimmage, so he got a tackle for a loss. And like, you're just like, that's points, that's points. Like, let's do this. It's exciting.
I can definitely see that dead time thing being a factor, because for sure I get frustrated when, when a game or my guy is off the field because now the other team's on defense, and I'm just like, oh man, like, can you turn him over real quick? So I need Jonathan Taylor to get a couple more carries, or and to the other extent, if your team goes up big and then they start pulling guys, you're like, oh well, great. Now all I'm seeing is Naheem Hines. Actually, I lost the championship last year because the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to bench Najee Harris, and they threw a screen pass to Benny Snell or somebody, and he got the half a point I needed to make it to the final, and I got the most points of the week in the third, fourth playoff, and I'm like, great, freaking Benny Snell, really? Can you just left Najee in for one play? Like, come on. So I can definitely see that being a factor of appeal, at least to play in a league with more pieces involved on both sides of the ball. So
and I think that there's different fantasy managers that are out there. You got your social guys that, they're going to show up for the draft. They're going to, maybe set their lineup every week. But generally they're just there to have fun. Maybe you got a group of guys that like meet for football every Sunday. So it's a reason to like crack jokes at each other. And then, it kind of goes up to, you got the degenerate people that are like, I want this to be as real to football as possible. And that's when they get in the IDP. PFF just launched all 22, which is everybody, punters, kickers, offensive linemen, the whole thing. And it's all scored based off of, PFF scoring, or, I don't really know. I haven't played it yet, but they just released it this year, but it's like their scoring mechanism.
Right.
Because how do you score an offensive lineman? They don't do anything. Well, fantasy wise,
the good ones don't. Yeah, for sure. The bad ones let up a lot of sacks, but the good ones, you don't know their names.
So exactly.
And punches aren't even people, so I don't think that should be included.
but yeah, so it's just like, what are you? Are you, trying to get as close to being a real manager? Like, what is the point of fantasy football?
Right.
Is it to just like have a few names on a spreadsheet that like get some numbers every week? Or is it that experience of managing, being the GM of a real team?
Right.
And everyone's got to answer that for themselves.
Yeah, I definitely think that and you might correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the dynasty community has really picked up. I mean, I didn't know anything about it until 2 years ago. I'm in 2 dynasty leagues now, and I think you're seeing a lot more content on dynasty, both online and on YouTube and on podcasts. It's becoming a real focus point. The redraft it's always going to be a big factor, but dynasty's gained a lot of traction, and I think, like you say, it's almost like a stepping stone into kind of the situations you're discussing. I don't think my wife will allow it for me to jump into something like that. Too much. I spend too much time as it is, as far as she's concerned. So if I'm researching, Aaron Donald's sack rates against the Jets, then over dinner she's gonna probably beat me over the head with a rolling pin. But I can definitely see the appeal. And the all 22, that's crazy. That's crazy for sure.
Right. Yeah, no, and you're right. It's a progression. You get introduced, and then it's almost like drugs. Like, you got to have a bigger and bigger hit. As time goes on, like the dynasty community is exploding right now. I've been doing fantasy in the fantasy football industry for 5-6 years now. And my first 2 years, I didn't really pay much attention to Dynasty at all. And then I got into a league, and then all of a sudden, like it opens up and you start seeing all the content and everything going on. And even then, like the amount of podcasts and websites and all that kind of stuff, 3-4 years ago was much less than they are now. Um, and once as Dynasty gets bigger, then people graduate onto IDP. Even the IDP landscape in the past 5 years, like when we started, there were two other podcasts for IDP. There was DLF's podcast, and I think it was Football Guys. That was it. And so we started our podcast, and we just ended it last year. But in that time, from when we started to when we ended, it went from 2 podcasts to like 16.
Yeah, well,
so it's fantasy football in total is growing
for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a league with my friends in England. It's just a free league, and mostly it's just trash talking between 12 English guys who they know very little. Polite. But what do you say?
That must be very polite trash talking.
Oh no, it's worse. It's way worse than here. Oh my gosh, you here is like watered down diet version of the stuff you get into back home. The all bets are off, talking about moms and sisters and aunts and uncles and all kinds of stuff. So it gets pretty hairy in there. But yeah, I'm loving to see the progression in fantasy football. I love it. I'm commissioner in one league. I was in 8 leagues last year and made it to the playoffs in 7, and nice. Which was it was a lot, but yeah, I love it. So, but before we wrap it up, is there any more like sleepers, deep sleepers you're targeting? I don't want you to give away your draft strategy, but both in regular redraft and in IDP, if you have anybody that you think is going to be like this year's Deebo Samuel, for example, like who he was going in the 5th, 6th round last year, and he went wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, whatever it was he finished as. So
yeah, I don't have too many sleepers like that. I do have my targets. For IDP, especially rookie, I mean, even in redraft, I think you want to try and grab Aiden Hutchinson. He's going to be a day 1 starter, and he's going to be on a team that is going to be on defense a lot. And if he's got the motor that he's built to have, they'll use him, and he'll be a great pickup in redraft leagues. Jordan Brooks, I mean, he's not really he's kind of a top build linebacker at this point, but with Bobby Wagner leaving Seattle, he is poised to take over that role and be really amazing. And then next to him would be Cody Barton, who there's a possibility he could fall into that role that Brooks was in last year, and so could be a sneaky good pickup there later in IDP leagues. Offense wise, man, I mean, we talked about Jameson Williams. He's the guy that I'm targeting in my dynasty rookie drafts, not just because I'm a Lions fan, but because of that talent and that ability that he's got, and where he's going. Eventually they'll get it figured out, and he's going to be pretty great. But I will say that generally speaking, I consider myself the guy in the chair. So like I can hang, I got football knowledge, but for I bring on staff of analysts, and I generally go to them for those deep sleepers and stuff. I'm a website designer, so I create the technology for them to succeed, and I just benefit. Nice. A buddy of mine, he said that all of this, the websites, we put out magazines and everything, he said all of this is just so Nathan can win his fantasy leagues. Sometimes that's true. I get free
Yeah.
access to all of this.
Yeah, that's nice.
Um, so yeah, no, I love football, love fantasy, but in the end, sometimes I just have to allow other people to be smarter, than me. And
That's not a bad strategy for sure. I wish Evan would maybe he could learn a lesson from you. Maybe he
yeah,
can
no, I
finally
mean,
admit,
I trust me, I get my championships.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
My sneaky one for this year for like the Debo Samuel kind of one is LaVisca Chenault. I think he could
Okay.
genuinely. He has a very similar archetype to Debo. A lot of kind of like you were saying with Amon-Ra, like a lot of close to the line of scrimmage receptions, and he was getting a bunch of targets last
Mhm.
year, but they were just a real hot mess of a team. I think with a big shift there this year and a fresh sort of start, he could be a sneaky play this year, and you're going to get him for free. He's going to be. I mean, you could get him for free in Dynasty right now, pretty much. Maybe like a fourth round
Yeah.
pick or a third if you're feeling real generous. But he's young, athletic, quick, strong. He could be a problem still in a
Oh,
team that
absolutely.
just lost a big piece. I know they signed Christian Kirk, but I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Yeah, no, they could spend all the money they want on him and Zay Jones. I think the end of the season, LaVisca Chenault might be the number one receiver on that offense. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Well,
Kind of talking about that too. I did have one come to mind here. Even in redraft, Drake London, there in Atlanta. I think he's with Calvin Ridley out this year, and they're kind of it's not great for them receiver wise. I think he comes in and slots in really well as a day one uh, possible boom play,
yeah.
in redraft.
Yeah, and his frame definitely helps the inaccuracies of Marcus Mariota's arm. Him
Yep.
and Pitts could be. I think Pitts is a piece that's going to be too expensive for me. But as
Mm.
far as fantasy pieces, I think they could both. Yeah, I think they both could be relevant this season in a pretty big way. And then that's a team that's going to be playing from behind a lot. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think that after this year, it's going to be very expensive to draft Drake London.
oh yeah. He was expensive in rookie drafts this year, but if you
True.
if in redraft, I think you might be right. I think he could have a
I
pretty
think
big year. And
most people won't even know who he is. Because while he's a bigger name if you are paying attention, but a lot of redraft players don't pay
yeah,
attention. So he's great for, especially if you're doing like a keeper league where like what we do is wherever you drafted the player, you get to keep them at that slot.
mm-hmm.
Like going back, like Devontae Freeman, his rookie year. I'm trying to think. There's been a few guys that I'll take that wild card draft pick at right at the end
Yeah, just
in those keeper
play.
leagues, and if they hit, man, you're just great price for those players.
Yeah, I had a keeper league that disbanded a couple of seasons ago where I got Alvin Kamara off of waivers his rookie year, about week 3 or something. Basically when I saw the news coming out that Peyton hated Adrian Peterson, and I was like, I might pick up this guy, the backup, because Ingram could go down. He's older. And that league, you got to keep the guy as if he was the next round earlier every year. So if you picked him off of waivers, obviously that was 16th round technically. So he'd be your 15th round pick next year, and then the year after he'd be your 14th pick, and then 13th,
Gotcha.
and so on. So you can't keep first rounders ever. So they always try, because they wanted to keep that pool of players pretty relevant. So I got Kamara and Zeke were my number 1 and 2 the year. Kamara's second year and Zeke's, that was his I think it was his second rushing title. So safe to say I coasted my way to a title that year. I think I had the
There you go.
RB1 and the
Nice.
RB3 or something. But yeah, that's a good take. I like Drake London. I think he could be a pretty big piece coming in the future here. Well, it was a pleasure having you on, Nathan. And like we said at the start of the show, check out his websites and what they have to offer with idpguys.org. Obviously, give us all a little bit of a taster of what that could be about, and maybe you can convert some people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing me on and letting me, kind of give my spiel at the beginning and just talking the Lions. Like, as you can see over my right shoulder, sorry. I got my little Lions memorabilia, my little gnome Stafford there. That hat has Stafford's signature on it, but also Matt Patricia's. So like, I wanted to burn it, but like I couldn't because Stafford, signed it as well. But yeah, definitely check out idpguys.org if you're interested in dynasty football. IDP, if you're about to get into it, check out the IDP draft kit. We've also got an awesome rookie mag, and our rankings for dynasty, it's combined IDP and offense go 700 players deep with at least 5 rankers for consensus. So
wow,
really like the deepest that I've seen and the most like largest consensus. And very few sites actually do combined rankings like that, where you can, see where Josh Allen QB sits versus Josh Allen, the defensive end. Yeah. And so, give it a shot, check it out. Follow me at Nate Cheat on Twitter, and keep a lookout for my new project, Content Design Coach. There's a trailer with my latest interview with Calvin and Hobby on my profile. Check that out, and go to contentdesigncoach.com when it's open.
Sounds great. And check us out as always at For FF's Sake on Twitter, Instagram, and all those good stuff, YouTube, and etc. And yeah, see you guys next time.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening. Follow For FF's Sake on all social media platforms and search for us wherever you get your podcasts.